Before the SATs, I stole the love letter the most popular girl in school wrote to my childhood friend. And because of that, they never got together. He hated me for the rest of his life. When he found out I had a crush on him, he told me I was pathologically jealous and manipulative, and that he could never like me. Later, we died in a car crash. Right before he died, he told me that if he could do it all over again, he'd beg me not to ruin his chance at happiness with her. I granted his wish. When I got a second chance, I didn't take the letter. And then to get into the same college as the girl he loved, he intentionally bombed the science section of his exams. After the exam scores were released, Leo and Jessica got together. At the graduation party, his romantic sacrifice of tanking the science section of his SATs for love became the stuff of legend. They started calling him the ultimate romantic. I sat in a dark corner, holding a glass, and watched the two of them surrounded by a crowd in the center of the room. I took a small sip of my juice. My best friend, Chloe, sat beside me, completely baffled. Is he insane? He just threw his whole future away. All for some uncertain future with Jessica? Yes. This time, between his future and Jessica, he chose Jessica. In my past life, I stole the letter to help him choose his future, and all I got was a lifetime of his hatred. He was even more disgusted when he found out I had a crush on him. Wendy, I'm not interested in someone so jealous and manipulative. The thought of you liking me is disgusting. The truth is, I didn't keep the letter from him forever. I gave it back to him on the night of our last exam. But when he took the letter and found Jessica, she rejected him. Leo, our scores are worlds apart. We won't even be at the same school, so how could we be together? A long-distance relationship for 4 years? I need a boyfriend who can be by my side whenever I need him. Can you do that? When a devastated Leo came back, he shot me a cold look. The next day, his parents frantically came to me, saying that Leo was planning to change his top-choice university, and begged me to talk him out of it. I wasn't surprised. But when I found Leo, before I could even say a word, his eyes landed on me and he sneered. What? Stealing the letter once wasn't enough? Are you going to try to ruin this for me again, Wendy? We were standing in a drafty stairwell. It was a sunny day, but it felt cold. I looked down at his frustrated, disheveled state and said only one thing. Leo, it took you 12 years of hard work to get to this point. In the end, after his parents threatened to hurt themselves, Leo gave up on changing his application. And he didn't get together with Jessica. From then on, I became the villain who kept him from Jessica, the target of his anger whenever he stewed over what could have been. Even at the very end, he was still blaming me. In the reek of blood inside the wrecked car, his voice was a raw plea. If we could do it all over again, Wendy, I'm begging you, don't be so arrogant. Don't interfere and ruin what we have. So, when I was reborn, I gave him what he wanted. I didn't take the letter before the exams. Leo saw it, saw that Jessica liked him back, but was worried their academic gap was too wide for them to be together. The reason she'd never responded to his advances. And then he burned his own escape route, leaving no room for a different outcome. He bombed the science section of his exams. His score was over 100 points lower than in our last life. He successfully closed the gap with Jessica, and they got together. After a few rounds of drinks, someone suddenly brought me up, their tone wistful. You know, I always thought Leo and Wendy would end up together. They were childhood friends and intellectual equals after all. But Leo quickly shut it down himself. Probably worried Jessica would get the wrong idea, he said dismissively. We're just regular friends who've known each other since we were kids. I smiled silently to myself, repeating those words in my head. Regular friends. But Leo was right. We had known each other since we were kids. From the first day of school until high school graduation, we were always in the same class. Besides my parents, Leo was probably the person I spent the most time with. I'd seen him pull all-nighters to solve a single problem, and he'd seen me in a pathetic state, insisting on taking an exam with a 104-degree fever. No one knew better than us how much work it took to be consistently ranked in the top 3, something everyone else thought we did effortlessly. The day we got into high school with the top 2 entrance scores in the city, Leo pointed to the first 2 photos on the honor roll bulletin board and asked me, "In 3 years, that'll be us up there. You in, Wendy. Behind the boy was the fiery evening sky of summer, intense and brilliant. The cicadas shrieked around us, a frantic, living sound. I held my books and tilted my head to look at him. It's a deal, Leo. Back then, all we saw in each other's eyes was ambition for the future, a hunger for our dreams, and a determination to succeed. But soon Jessica appeared in Leo's eyes. In a high school where most students were buried in their books, disheveled and fighting for their dreams, Jessica was stunningly beautiful. During the cultural festival shortly after school started, she stood on stage in a white dress, like a sliver of the moon that had fallen to earth, casting a hazy glow that blurred everything around her. She alone captured the attention of every single person there. After that night, Jessica's name was on everyone's lips in every classroom. She became the unattainable dream girl for countless boys, Leo included. The first time I sensed something was wrong was when he came back from delivering papers to the next class for our math teacher. He sat at his desk, his ears slightly red. The test paper in front of him sat there for all 4 evening study periods, but he only finished one problem. On his scratch paper, which was covered in dense calculations, 3 out-of-place words appeared. Jessica. He had scribbled over them with his pen, but the name was still perfectly clear. Later, I heard that when he went to deliver the papers, Jessica had flirted with him. While joking around with her friends, she accidentally bumped into Leo and hugged him. The boy who was hugged just froze for a second before saying stiffly, "Be careful." Jessica just smiled at him. "Sorry about that, Mr. Genius." "Oh, and you're really handsome." A chorus of whoops and hollers erupted around them. And Leo, who had always been calm, reserved and unreadable, was flustered. Leo and I were similar in some ways, rational, clear-headed, and calm as still water. Jessica was emotional and passionate, like an effervescent tablet dropped into that still water. A beautiful effervescent tablet, at that. So I wasn't surprised at all that Leo was drawn to her. It's just like in so many TV dramas and novels, where the main couple has contrasting personalities. The common trope is that people are attracted to those who are different from them. There are so many examples. The CEO and the Cinderella type, the brainiac and the slacker, the ice queen and the warm ray of sunshine. At the time, I thought that no matter how smitten Leo was, he would always understand what was most important. But the ever-calm, rational, and sensible boy rebelled for Jessica after all. I'm not really sure how he and Jessica got close. I was already overwhelmed with my own heavy workload. The most we talked about was the solution to this problem, the answer to that one, or whether we were ready for the next exam. By the time I realized they were getting closer, Jessica was already comfortably calling him nerd and Mr. Genius, and Leo's reactions showed he was already used to it. I started to notice that Leo would disappear for half an hour every day at noon. He was tutoring Jessica. He'd suddenly have plans every Saturday morning. He was attending small get-togethers that Jessica organized. I knew Leo was falling for her, but that couldn't make me stop and focus on their budding relationship. I continued to bury my head in my studies. Then came the national physics competition in our sophomore year. The school held several rounds of selections to choose one student to represent us. For the final round, a 5-to-1 competition, Leo didn't show up. Jessica had fainted from a fever. After taking her to the hospital, at her pleading request, Leo chose to stay and keep her company for the entire afternoon. I don't know how to describe what I felt then. I just remember running to the hospital and finding him, and all my emotions boiled down to a single, confused word. Leo. He was leaning against the hospital corridor wall, his expression placid. He just said, "I've played by the rules my whole life. I get to rebel at least once, right?" So he gave up on all the hard work and preparation he had put in. He forgot all those nights he spent cramming for problems while sick. Looking at the handsome, refined boy before me, for a moment he felt like a stranger. A strange, inexplicable urge to cry pricked my eyes. But I didn't say anything. I knew, however, that Leo's behavior was not a good sign. So when he was about to face his second major choice, I made the choice for him. I took the love letter Jessica left for him on the eve of our final exams. Before that, I had actually prepared myself for Leo to confess to her after the exams and for them to get together. I was even ready to offer my congratulations. But I never expected that on my way back to the classroom to grab a notebook during an honors assembly, I would walk in on Jessica leaving the letter. In the empty classroom, she stood by Leo's desk, talking to a friend. The gist of their conversation could be summarized as this. She had initially approached Leo as part of a bet with her friends to win over the top student in our grade, Leo. But in the process, she actually fell for him. Still, she felt the gap between them was too big, that they wouldn't get into the same university, and she didn't want a long-distance relationship. That's why, even though she knew Leo liked her, she always insisted they were just classmates. The letter was her way of expressing her hope of going to the same university as him, and her desire to be with him. Before, I could have said with certainty that Leo wouldn't give up his future for anyone or anything. But at that moment, I wasn't so sure. To prevent that 1 in 100 possibility, after they left, I went in and took the letter. In the countless times that followed, as I faced Leo's mockery, I would ask myself over and over if I had made the wrong choice. Once, I tried to have a calm conversation with him. Leo, even if you had seen it back then, what would have changed? Would you really have just? He cut me off with a sneer, his voice filled with absolute certainty. Wendy, I would have. I looked at him in silence for a moment, then let out a soft laugh. For the first time, I realized I had indeed been wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. As the party was winding down, Jessica walked over to me, her arm linked with Leo's. She raised her glass with a beaming smile. Wendy, you've been with Leo for 18 years. Even if you're just regular friends, your relationship is different from everyone else's. So you'll wish us well too, right? I glanced at the boy next to her, dressed in a black t-shirt, his features relaxed and clear. I smiled politely and corrected her. I wasn't with Leo for 18 years. We just happened to be on the same path, walking alongside each other for 18 years. From now on, our paths diverge. Plenty of people have wished you happiness today. You don't need one more from me. I wish you a bright future. I was being sincere. After all, we all came from ordinary families. Who among us didn't study their hearts out to break through the crowd for the sake of a good future? In our past life, after Leo got into a top university, he became the star student of the most prestigious professor in the physics department. He met a group of esteemed mentors and countless like-minded friends. With access to the country's best resources, he forged ahead with high spirits in his beloved field of physics research. The name Leo appeared again and again in academic journals, and he was a confident speaker at research conferences. His future was limitless. His only regret, perhaps, was his unattainable dream girl, Jessica. She was his obsession for life. At the few class reunions we had, I'd hear people mention she was dating someone new, then broke up with him, or that some rich kid was showering her with thousands of dollars to win her over. The last I heard of her was during the New Year holiday. She was getting married. That night, Leo got completely wasted with his friends and came knocking on my door. My parents happened to be out. The moment I opened the door, he stormed in, his voice dripping with venom. You must be so happy now, Wendy. She's getting married. Are you satisfied now? I stood quietly by the sofa and let him vent, then poured him a glass of warm water. Have some water. He didn't take it. To be honest, after so many years, I was tired too. Watching him gradually fall asleep after his emotional outburst, I casually draped a blanket over him. Back in my room, I received a gossip update from Chloe, sourced from her intricate network of friends. I heard Jessica's fiancé is some new money guy who fell for her at first sight at a friend's birthday party. She already had a boyfriend while he was chasing her. At first, she said no, but then he just started throwing money at her, until she was willing to break up with her boyfriend. I looked down at the message in silence, and suddenly I wondered, if Leo had really given up his future for Jessica, what would the ending have been? I used to think I would never know the outcome of that other choice. I never imagined I'd get to go back and start all over. Leo finally got his wish. Watching the two of them, now back in the center of the crowd, being coaxed by everyone into a kiss, I finished the juice in my glass and turned to leave. Of the countless hypothetical choices, Leo's fantasy was always that even if he and Jessica went to the same college, he could still reach the same heights through his own ability. In reality, no one could know the final answer, but I'll be watching Leo. This time around, apart from Leo's choice, nothing else changed. I still got into the same university as in my previous life with the same score, and was accepted into my desired mathematics program. For the entire summer before leaving for college, Leo and I never saw each other. He was on a graduation trip with Jessica. I found a part-time job tutoring middle school students. Occasionally, when I ran into Leo's parents, their greetings were accompanied by pained smiles, and I could see streaks of silver in their dark hair. I think they will probably never know why Leo, their talented and hardworking son who had never ranked below the top 3, would suddenly perform so poorly on his exams. They were probably so worried he was devastated that they tried to comfort him in every way they could, forcing smiles and telling him to go on a trip to clear his head. For a moment, I didn't know which would be worse, for them to know the truth, or for them to never find out. But looking at them, a pang of sadness rose in my chest. After all, besides my own parents, they were the adults who had been around me the most, who had watched me grow up. For a long time, because of my parents' work, I had lunch at Leo's house. His mom would always make my favorite sweet and sour pork ribs. She knew all my tastes. She would even specifically tell Leo to look after me at school and not let other students bully me. Back then, Leo would hold a slice of watermelon and respond with a mature look on his face. "Don't worry, I won't let her get bullied." I was a quiet girl, and with my good grades, I actually got along well with my classmates. But Leo, with a personality so different from the rebellious boys of his age, was often an outcast. He didn't care though because he had me. I once thought we would always walk the same path, but I never expected him to turn away midway. The next time I saw Leo was at the train station on the day we left for college. In our last life, we were heading to the same city. This time I was going north while he and Jessica were going south. In the bustling waiting room, he was sitting with Jessica. As I passed them, I saw him watching videos with her on his phone, some relationship blogger analyzing the 10 signs a boyfriend loves his girlfriend. He would nod occasionally in agreement with her comments. Perhaps from being outdoors for 2 months, his usually pale skin had tanned, making his features look deeper. He had a new tattoo on his arm, Jessica's initials, and was wearing a matching couple's outfit with her. This version of him was slowly diverging from the Leo in my memory. He must have sensed my gaze because he looked up at me. Across a row of seats, I met his eyes openly and gave a slight, polite smile as a greeting. He froze for a second, subconsciously moving his tattooed arm back. When Jessica turned to ask him something, he quickly looked away and said something to her. Based on his lip movements, I guessed it was, "It's nothing." Just then, my train was called. As I queued for the ticket check and walked to the platform, I felt an intense gaze on my back. I knew who it was, but I didn't turn around. After I got on the train and found my seat, I received a message from Leo. Looking at our last conversation from months ago, I felt a flicker of disorientation. This infrequency would probably become the norm, until one day, some ordinary exchange would become the last conversation we'd ever have. Snapping back to the present, I looked at his new message. It was short. "Wendy, I wish you a bright future too." Of course, my future would be bright. I was heading to a new platform, a bigger world. I would be surrounded by top talents from all over the country, entering a completely different circle. Here, there were countless people who were both hardworking and gifted, and humble yet brilliant people were everywhere. In fact, once I escaped the limited perspective of a single high school, I would realize that Jessica wasn't as otherworldly beautiful as she had seemed. That was just a filter cast upon her by a crowd of dream chasers who were hiding their own light. Now, shedding their uniform exteriors and heading into their own fields of expertise, everyone was a pearl. After that, I got busy with my major courses, discussing projects with professors and classmates, and participating in various competitions. I also did some volunteer teaching, learned to paint, and drew portraits of every cat and dog on campus, giving each of them a name. Whenever I went home for the holidays, I always managed to miss Leo. During the new year, I would go back to my hometown, so for 4 whole years, we never once crossed paths. We met again at a class reunion 4 years later. For years can change a lot. The once fresh-faced, Naive teenagers were now mature and steady adults, discussing their future plans, sharing the competitions they had participated in, and exchanging information about the job offers they had received. Each of them bore the halo of a prestigious university and held numerous awards. Though they hadn't yet entered the workforce, their futures were promising. I was the last to arrive due to traffic. As soon as I entered, I was warmly pulled into the center of the crowd. With our similar experiences, I quickly blended into the conversation. Just as I was casually chatting with them about my life over the past 4 years, someone pointed at me and feigned anger. "You guys have no idea. In our sophomore year, our universities held a joint debate tournament, and Wendy and I ended up as opponents. Her flawless logic completely steamrolled us. I have to say, I didn't feel any of that old classmate camaraderie." I smiled at him. "You flatter me." He didn't let it go and continued to tease. "I never would have guessed it, Wendy. You were always so quiet and gentle. But on the debate stage, you're incredibly rational and relentless, not giving an inch. I'm curious, are you like that when you argue with your boyfriend?" His question drew a round of laughter. Then someone, as if suddenly remembering something, turned to Leo and asked, "Hey, where's Jessica? Our ultimate romantic, isn't your beautiful girl with you?" Only then did I notice Leo, who had been sitting quietly in a corner of the room, not saying a word. Like everyone else, he had changed a lot. The humility and confidence that once shone in his eyes were now completely gone. How to put it, although he was still quiet and reserved, sitting here now, he seemed out of place. Like a neglected outsider. The same boys who had once enviously called him the ultimate romantic had now become young men who had received better resources and seen a bigger world. Revisiting that topic now felt a little different. There seemed to be a faint hint of mockery and schadenfreude in their words. After all, he had once been the undisputed king among this group. Now he didn't even have a topic of conversation he could join. Chloe, holding a wine glass, sighed very softly behind me. "I guess reality isn't a TV drama after all." In a TV drama, the "for years later" scene might show the male lead having made a triumphant comeback. But in reality, the Leo of today wasn't more handsome or more successful. He couldn't compare to anyone else in the room. After all, a person's success can't be solely attributed to their own efforts. Platform, resources, connections, talent, opportunity, environment, each one is an essential condition. So the Leo who was once a renowned name in the physics world was now, for all intents and purposes, a nobody. I wasn't surprised. And Leo, who was suddenly put on the spot, froze for a few seconds before looking over at me. His Adam's apple bobbed. In a calm tone he said, "We broke up." A few days after the reunion, Chloe came to me to share the gossip she had dug up about Leo and Jessica. Apparently, not long after they started college under Jessica's tutelage, Leo not only mastered photography, photo editing, and choosing lipsticks, but he even got into a fight with another guy over her. I recalled seeing Leo, who used to only occasionally share physics-related news, posting pictures or videos of Jessica on his social feed every few days. At the time, I thought, true love really can change a person. But once the honeymoon phase ended and things settled down, Leo started getting busy with his own major, while Jessica met more people through various activities. The two began to have disagreements. Jessica complained that Leo didn't have time for her because of his competitions and frequently demanded he go out with her when he was trying to focus on preparing. Meanwhile, Leo couldn't understand Jessica's need for the first cup of milk tea of autumn, failing to grasp why that one specific cup held a special ceremonial meaning, when you could buy milk tea any day. The small but significant disagreements piled up, and the end result was the cold shoulder. Chloe got more and more worked up as she spoke, her tone laced with a cool indignation. All that true love. How much of it was real, and how much was just love? Once the novelty wears off, the conflicts just multiply. Not to mention, they were both meeting more impressive people, and their relationship was built on a very real sacrifice from one side. That was an invisible time bomb just waiting for a fuse. So when a handsome rich kid started pursuing Jessica, her dissatisfaction with Leo grew. After all, his biggest draw had been his #1 status, but in the bigger world of college, grades were no longer the only measure of a person. Faced with their fading affection and Jessica's subtle disdain, Leo finally couldn't stop himself from bringing up the SATs and how he'd given up the science section for her. But all he got in return was Jessica's mocking retort. For me? Leo, that was your choice, wasn't it? Don't pin the blame on me just because you're unhappy with the outcome. With those words, they had completely torn away the facade. They broke up soon after, and Jessica seamlessly moved on to the rich kid. And so the legendary love story, tagged with campus beauty, valedictorian, and sacrifice score, came to an end. I idly flipped through a magazine, responding lazily to Chloe's passionate monologue. Oh, is that so? She was quiet for a few seconds, then let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. Honestly, as someone who was his classmate for 6 years, I'm really disappointed in him. And I feel sorry for him. Couldn't he have at least finished the exam properly, and then made his choice when applying to colleges? Why burn all his bridges like that? I really want to know if he regrets his choice now. The love he was willing to throw away his score for was only worth 4 years, it turns in. I smiled, my voice calm and composed. It was his own choice. Whether he regrets it or not, no one else is going to bear the consequences for him anymore. But in my past life, under his daily barrage of resentment and disgust, I truly did come to regret it. Back then, we lived in the same city for our studies and work, and since we were both in academia, we inevitably crossed paths. At home, we maintained a superficial harmony for our parents' sake, keeping up appearances. But every time we met, I was met with his cold sarcasm. I think his hatred for me peaked when he discovered my crush. I've kept a diary since I was young, and because I spent the most time with Leo, my diary was mostly about him. It recorded us hiking together, him carrying me home when I sprained my ankle. When I overslept and was late for school, he would stand with me as punishment. When I forgot a book, he'd give me his. We went to the library together on weekends, represented the school in various competitions, comforted each other when our exam rankings dropped, and argued endlessly over the solution to a single problem. Everything between Leo and me was made up of small, ordinary moments, with no dramatic emotional swings. So at first, I didn't even realize I was falling for him. It wasn't until the day he pointed to the photos on the honor roll and asked if I was in, that I belatedly realized that the lines of every page of my diary were filled with my feelings for him. I loved his determination to fight for his dreams, the light in his eyes when he faced a difficult problem, and the way he would look at me with a steady gaze whenever I felt discouraged and wanted to give up, asking, "So, are you just going to stop here, Wendy?" That night, for the first time, I wrote in my diary, "I like Leo. I like Leo." But then Jessica appeared and grew closer to Leo. Since I had little contact with her, and our only connection was Leo, I only mentioned her once in my diary, writing a single sentence. Leo, he's fallen for Jessica. After the incident with the love letter, the relationship between Leo and me grew increasingly strained. Each argument chipped away at my feelings, and just as my crush had begun without a clear start, it ended without one either. I thought he'd never find out about my secret crush, but I never expected him to see my diary when my dad asked him over to help install a new bookshelf. To this day, I can still clearly remember the mocking look in his eyes as he held up my diary and looked at me. His voice was icy as he asked, "You like me, is that it?" I stared at the diary in his hand, silent for a moment, then admitted it frankly. Yes, I did. Perhaps my composure provoked him. He suddenly threw the diary at me with great force, demanding angrily, "So you took the letter?" The hard cover scraped my cheek. It hurt. In that exact moment, I suddenly realized that I didn't like him anymore. Faced with the past that held my secret feelings, now carelessly tossed aside by him, I felt no sadness at all. I just picked up the diary from the floor, wiped it off, and apologized to him very seriously. "I'm sorry, Leo. I shouldn't have taken the letter. I shouldn't have gotten in the way of your destiny. And I shouldn't have presumed to like you." He was still not satisfied. He scoffed, turned, and walked away, leaving me with those words that have been seared into my memory. Pathologically jealous and manipulative. Honestly, although I liked him back then, I valued our friendship, our journey as partners, far more than that shallow crush. So my purpose in taking the letter was never to stop him from being with Jessica. I just hoped that he could, without any outside influence, achieve a score that matched the 12 years of hard work he had put in. So I delayed the choice he had to face by a few days. I was never jealous of Jessica either. I've always understood that you can't force feelings. If he had ended up with her, I would have wished them well, and then I would have continued on my own path. My life didn't have to revolve around Leo. Now I've managed to correct the mistaken trajectory of my past life and get back on the path I was supposed to be on. But even though I didn't take the letter this time, I didn't deliberately distance myself from this life's Leo either. At least before the exams, everything was the same as in the last life. But after living in different circles for 4 years, we didn't exchange a single word at the reunion from start to finish. This growing distance didn't affect me at all, so I made no effort to reach out and mend things. Until his mother was hospitalized. My mom brought me along to visit. After putting down the fruit we brought, I sat in the hospital room, filled with the scent of disinfectant, and listened to my mom and Leo's mom chat about daily life. Then I went outside to take a call. On my way back, I ran into Leo by the flower beds. He was wearing a black jacket, his brow furrowed with a weariness and frustration he couldn't shake. A half-smoked cigarette was between his fingers. That familiar expression made me freeze for a moment. In our past life, he looked just like that when he hit a wall in his research, or when he was trying in vain to win Jessica back. Back then, though he was successful, he still put in an incredible amount of effort behind the scenes. The path of academia is, after all, arduous and lonely. As for winning Jessica back, after achieving some success, Leo did go find her, and they did reconnect. But by then, all of Leo's professional and social circles were in the city where he went to college, and he spent most of his time in the lab. Compared to the wealthy, leisured men also pursuing Jessica, he didn't have much of an advantage. In the end, after 6 months of trying, Jessica rejected him again, making a perfect exit from his life. From then on, the moon hung high in the sky, forever unattainable. And the crime of me taking the letter and preventing them from being together followed me for the rest of my life. In his mind, if he had been at the same school as Jessica, if they had been together all along, the outcome would have been different. Now looking at him sitting here, I didn't know why he had that expression again. The moment our eyes met, he stubbed out his cigarette. He stood up and walked toward me, his expression neutral. His voice was hoarse from smoking, a little dry. I didn't get a chance to say hi last time we met. You've changed a lot, Wendy. You're more beautiful, more accomplished. He paused, then seemed to apologize with some guilt. I was immature back then. I was worried she'd misunderstand and that it would affect our relationship, so I called us regular friends. It was my fault for not being mature enough. I waited quietly for him to finish, then smiled at him, my heart at peace. I responded graciously. It's okay, Leo. We were just regular friends. What else would we have been? His expression stiffened and then fell. He looked up at the fading sunset, let out a self-deprecating laugh, and said wistfully, You know, I've thought about it countless times since then. What would it be like now if I had never seen that letter? I followed his train of thought, my voice light. That wouldn't have happened. The letter was left there. There's no way you wouldn't have seen it. He suddenly turned to look at me. What if someone had taken it? I froze for a second. Before I could speak, I heard him ask again, Wendy, if you had seen it beforehand, would you have taken it? I looked closely at his face, trying to find something, but there was nothing there. So I just shook my head calmly. No, I wouldn't have taken it. We broke eye contact in silence. He suddenly smiled, as if finally relieved, and repeated several times, almost in celebration, Good, that's good. Then he added, After we broke up, I kept having the same dream, over and over. I dreamt that you took the letter before the exams, and in the end, she and I never got together. But I hated you for a lifetime. In the end, we died in a car crash that I caused. The warmth of the blood felt so real, as if it had actually happened. I just hummed in response, planning to head back to the hospital room. I told him gently, It was all fake. Don't worry about it. But I knew it was real. The car crash happened on the day of Jessica's wedding. Before that, our high school had invited us back for an alumni event. Our old homeroom teacher asked us to film a short video for the current students with the theme, Always on the Road. And so, I got into Leo's car for a scenic drive to film. Following the script we had prepared, I sat in the passenger seat, adjusting the equipment and discussing camera angles with Leo. It was a rare moment of peace between us, the first since our exams. The filming went smoothly. On the way back, I leaned quietly against the window, no longer talking, just watching the scenery blur past. Then I heard Leo's phone ring. He subconsciously answered it on speaker. The next second, Jessica's bright, clear voice filled the car. "Leo, it's my wedding today. I forgot to send you an invitation. We've known each other for so many years, we're all friends. I'll text you the time and place in a bit." As the call ended, silence fell in the car. I was just about to say that he could drop me off here, and I'd get a cab, when he suddenly turned the car around. I knew. He was still going to go. But unfortunately, he never made it. In the next second, we were hit by a truck. The feeling of my organs being rearranged really hurt. But after the pain became numbness, what I felt was, surprisingly, relief. Before I lost consciousness, I heard Leo weakly call my name a few times, "Wendy, Wendy," followed by his plea that if he could do it all over again, I wouldn't ruin his chance with Jessica. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my first year of high school. I didn't know what Leo meant by his "that's good," or his recurring dream. But it didn't matter anymore. The second time I saw Leo was on the day his mother was discharged from the hospital. I went to deliver some soup my mom had made. I chatted with her for a while, listening to her reminisce about the past. She pulled out an old paper photograph, a picture of Leo and me after winning a middle school competition. "Time flies, doesn't it? I remember when your mom and I were in the same hospital room, waiting to give birth. You were born just a day after Leo. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed. Wendy, you're still as beautiful as you were when you were little. Leo's dad adored you back then. He'd hold you and you wouldn't cry or fuss, just smile quietly. Later, when you were a little older, you and Leo were inseparable. All us adults used to joke that you two would definitely end up together." I smiled politely and went along with her. "Auntie, that was all just kid stuff. You can't take it seriously." She patted my hand and sighed. "It's Leo's loss. The gap between you two is just getting wider and wider. He's not good enough for you anymore." I gave a small laugh, intending to correct her way of thinking. "Auntie, it's not about being good enough. What's important is whether two people are on the same path." She probably misunderstood my meaning, because she said, "I heard from Leo that he's preparing for his master's entrance exams. He's aiming for his original top choice university, which happens to be in the same city where you went to college. Maybe then." I gently interrupted her. "Auntie, I'm going abroad to study. Also, I have a boyfriend. I just haven't had the chance to tell my parents yet." Just then, Leo came in from outside and went to the kitchen to wash his hands. We were sitting on the living room sofa. I didn't know if he heard me, but he stood there with his back to me, perfectly still. He didn't move for a long time. The air was quiet for a few seconds. To break the tension, Leo's mom asked about my boyfriend. I smiled and told her how we met. He was a guy I met at a competition, gentle, clear-headed, humble, and self-disciplined. He was in a combined bachelor's master's doctoral program, won a national scholarship every year, and had won awards in every competition he entered. He could do calligraphy, play chess, and play the drums. Then I opened my phone and showed her a photo of him giving a speech at an academic forum. After she looked, I told her, "He's someone I like very much, and he's walking the same path as me." The conversation ended there. Later, on my way home, I inexplicably thought of Leo standing at the sink with his sleeves rolled up. There were faint scars on his forearm, where the tattoo had been removed. For a second, it felt like time was overlapping. The name on the scratch paper, scribbled over countless times but still visible, was the signal of his beginning with Jessica. Now, the faint scars on his arm were the mark of their end. The sudden rush of teenage hormones had finally receded like the tide. The entanglement between Leo and me pretty much ends here. I admit, I was once very curious to see the fate he would face after choosing that other path. I wanted to know how, in a world where every channel for advancement is filled with countless competitors, he would manage to climb back to the heights he reached in our past life. I especially wanted to know how the family that had spent over a decade and countless resources cultivating him would support him in chasing that dream all over again. I have to admit, I wanted to see him struggle on that path, to prove that my actions in the past life were correct. But I also knew that I was, in fact, wrong. There's a line in Charles Dickens's The Mystery of Edwin Drood. The best of all politeness is to mind your own business. Once you get involved, you have to take responsibility. So this time I knew my place and didn't interfere with any of Leo's choices. In the last life, he regretted not being with Jessica. I don't know if in this life, he regrets those 21 multiple-choice questions he gave up. But the strange thing about fate is that there is never a perfect choice. No matter which one you pick, there will be regrets. What matters is bearing the consequences of your choice. And now, I have no interest in how Leo's life turns out. Life is long after all. From here on out, whether he makes a stunning comeback and returns to his peak, or simply fades into mediocrity, it has nothing to do with me. I stopped looking back and kept moving forward. During my 3 years studying abroad, my boyfriend and I were in a long-distance relationship. When Chloe called me, she teased, "Wendy, you're gone for 3 years. Aren't you afraid you and your boyfriend will drift apart?" While rushing to meet a deadline, I calmly replied, "We may not be in the same place, but we're running toward the same goal. Our souls will only grow closer." She made a suggestive tisk sound then, as if remembering something, changed the subject. "Remember Jessica? She got pursued by some new money guy who fell for her at first sight and threw a ton of money at her. Her wedding was so extravagant. She invited a huge crowd of our old classmates and got so many envious looks. But unfortunately, not even 2 years later, the new money guy got tired of her and met a younger, prettier girl, whom he started showering with money, as usual. When Jessica found out she was being cheated on, she caused a huge scene, but all she got was the husband demanding a divorce. She refused, and now they're still locked in a battle over it." I listened absently, suddenly realizing that Jessica's face had become blurry in my mind. Besides remembering that she was pretty, I couldn't recall any other strong memories of her. Even when she was dating Leo, she held no special place in my eyes. I never saw her as a rival. From the beginning to the end, we were from 2 different worlds. Seeing my lack of interest, Chloe dropped the subject and added, "Leo took the master's entrance exam twice and got rejected both times by a margin of 0.1 points. Talk about bad luck." Finally done with my deadline, I let out a long sigh and replied casually, "Oh well, I wish him luck." Not long after that, one day, I suddenly received a retracted message notification. It was from Leo, but I didn't ask about it. It wasn't until I returned to the country and my old friends threw me a welcome home party that Leo, who was also there, asked me if I had seen the message. I shook my head and said it was the middle of the night, I was asleep. He gave a bitter smile and explained, "I had a fragmented dream and mistook it for reality. I'm glad I didn't disturb you." I maintained a friendly smile, realizing I'd told a clumsy lie. His middle of the night was my daytime. But it didn't matter anymore. Just like that retracted message, "Wendy, did you ever like me?" The answer was no longer important. What mattered was that now on my own path, I would go further and further, and the person I love was right there, just ahead. I watched as he gave me one last deep look before turning and walking away, his back looking thin and lonely. My boyfriend walked over with a small cake and asked me softly who that was. I pulled my gaze away, linked my arm with his, and smiled dismissively. "Just a regular friend I grew up with."